Prince Harry seems to be under the impression that people don't receive Meghan Markle well or don't care for Meghan Markle, or that she is disliked only because the press were unfair and reported on her unfairly, and that is why people don't like Meghan Markle. He misses the fact that the reason why people don't like Meghan Markle is because she comes across as fake, because she lied about people, because she bit the hand that feeds her, because she took opportunities and privilege and acted like it wasn't good enough. Because she clearly doesn't try when she's given opportunities and then she fails. Because she very clearly has obvious high narcissistic tendencies. Bev says, I still remember Harry stating that the public dislikes Meghan because of all the undeserved negative press she receives, intimating that we would genuinely love the Megs if not for the nasty critics and trolls. Newsflash, Harry, we dislike her and you because you come across as opportunistic grifters and have no authenticity. I think this is exactly where Harry and Meghan have continued to fail, is that they won't allow themselves to realize that they need to take accountability for their own actions and choices and behaviors. Instead, they're just still worried about blaming other people. And that's part of what drives their incessant media exposures, that they always want to continue to blame everyone else. And every story they don't like, they have to blame someone else and blame the publication and say, oh no, you guys are all wrong. It's never an understanding that people are reacting to Harry and Meghan's behavior. Most people are still smart enough to discern between just random rumor and watching someone's actual actions. L Orchid 23 says, what I find particularly funny is how Markle invariably fails again and again and again and always struts away from her latest disaster like everything was a screaming success. The delusion is strong with this woman. Yes, it's quite fascinating, isn't it? And frustrating also, because then she just never grasps that, oh, you actually made some mistakes there. But that's the very thing that's going to continue this pattern of her and Harry being disliked forevermore, as long as they continue on this path. Rebel Raj says, I'm to the point of feeling sorry for her. I'm old enough to be her dad if I were her dad. And if she would listen to her dad, I'd tell her to take the complete opposite approach to win the public back. Learn to laugh at yourself. Make yourself the butt of jokes. Don't take life so serious. This reminds me of Catherine O'Hara, who recently passed away. She said similarly that being able to laugh at yourself is one of the greatest gifts you can have. And I think that's so true. My partner helped me learn to laugh at myself, and now I do all the time. And it's so much better, so much easier. When he first met me, I was a little bit more serious, I think, in some ways, or I took myself a little bit more seriously than I do now. And I'm glad for that change. He continues, love everyone, let them laugh at and with you, then in the end they will love you back. Stop being arrogant and learn to be humble. That is great advice. And it also reminds me of, wasn't there a Seinfeld episode where George was told to do the opposite of what he thought and things started to work out better for him? Meghan should do that. Just do the opposite of what she first thinks and maybe things will work out better. The most relatable thing about the Meg says, this outfit may not love me, but I love it. And honestly, same. Great comment from Graham. I love that. And I think when it comes to all the fashion flops and fails and fashion editions that we've done discussing her tragic fashions are not just coming from a place of Meghan has a lot of style concerns that can give us great examples for our own wardrobes of like good lessons to learn. Because honestly, when everything just looks perfectly polished, it's hard to see or visualize what would happen if it wasn't perfectly, tailored or perfectly fit or whatever, or well styled. But also because she's just so rude and unkind that I think people have less grace for someone dressing in a pretentious manner and making silly fashion mistakes than they do for somebody who seems genuinely kind, making the occasional fashion error. You know what I mean? This person says, my biological mom was considered the expert in her social circles the way Meghan tried to claim she was, both in parenting and in the crunchy lifestyle. She has no contact with any of her adult children to show for it. As soon as we could get out from under her roof, we did and never once looked back. A good parent is always questioning whether or not they could have done better. A bad parent always believes they did their best, regardless of circumstance or their actual effort level. I think that's a great way to put it. When I had my first, I was very young, and he was a surprise. And I remember saying to the nurse, she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I just want to make sure I do a good job." And she said that that's a huge piece of the puzzle. If you're trying to do a good job and you keep that as your mission to always make sure you're trying your best to do a good job, you'll probably do a pretty okay job. She was very reassuring, but I think that's very true. If you're not constantly thinking and kind of reassessing, am I doing a good job? I even ask my children, do you feel like I'm doing a good job? Because I just want to make sure that I do. And I don't get that vibe from the Meg. I get the, oh, I know what to do. Like, remember she said that her go-to dinner when she's out of time is microwavable macaroni and cheese and frozen chicken nuggets. And she adds flax seeds on top. Gross. Miku says, I won't shut up about this because no one else is calling out Harry on his lies. He claimed Lily's hair is long enough for her to sit on it. I remember that. Great catch. He said that it reaches past her bottom, and that was to put her in direct competition with Princess Charlotte, who has very long hair. Good point. Every single photo we've ever seen of Lily, her hair is either shoulder length or only just past her shoulders. That's a great catch. I remember when Harry said that. I completely forgot about it. And it's true. We've never seen a photograph of Lily with actually super long hair, long enough to sit on. And he did say that. That's crazy. Why even say something like that? How weird. Armand says, I fully agree. One of my learns, as I follow the comedy team of Harold and Meg, is to avoid clickbait, which aims for full-body chills at the expense of authenticity, and concentrate on channels which elevate their reporting with time-coded edits and hands in the granular and are anchored into their own knowing in how they show up in the world. Well played. This viewer says, anyone who has dealt with narcissistic behavior knows Meghan. She will never change. When she tells you she's tall and has a medical degree, you'd best pretend to believe her, or you're going to the hit list. She sees things, reads things she likes, and claims to be that. She never, ever makes mistakes. When you feel hurt when she wrongs you, it's because you're crazy. I know there are many people who have been there as well. They can add a lot to this list. I've always said that this is one of the biggest draws with watching Harry and Meghan's saga play out and discussing it in online spaces like these is because the narcissistic traits are so obvious and profound, and we can easily see the same pattern of behavior or thought processes in people that we've experienced in our own life. And it's got a great informative element to it, because when you're dealing with somebody in your own life that's kind of like that, or maybe just has some tendencies of high narcissism, you don't always have that safe space to then discuss it with other people who also know that person. You can't always, like, for so many reasons. It might get back to that person, or that person might find out, or maybe you don't know if that person thinks the same way or feels the same way. Maybe they're, you never know. And so especially if you've been around those types of people for a while, or multiple people who are high in narcissism, you can't go, having a conference with other people who also know that person to be like, that's like super messed up, right? Or something. You can't do that. So then you're kind of alone in analyzing the experience with that person. And so I think viewing what Harry and Meghan do and contextualizing it in, oh, this is a pattern of narcissism or high narcissistic behaviors, then it's just very, very helpful and reassuring and can give insight into our own personal lives, but also like other people who are in the public eye and super narcissistic. It also can be applied to them and help with coping with those types of crazy behaviors that we have been observing. Maria Annette says, yes, I've always thought Markle wasn't particularly intelligent, cunning maybe, but she copies words and phrases that she thinks make her sound intelligent and then gives herself away by using them wrongly. Excellent point. Many a time she's just rattling off things that she has heard and she thinks are going to go well. Like when she said that comment about Mastige, being her brand is Mastige. I mentioned that in a recent video. I'll link it for you if you missed it, of exactly why that was a huge mistake. But that's a great example of it. Dorothy Hayes says, in addition to Harry not understanding what trolling is, can we please talk about lived experience? Are there some non-lived experiences? Good point. Your comment illustrates exactly why I think Harry and Meghan's overuse of this type of language, where they kind of almost like go out of their way to fill in what they're going to say with unnecessary words and phrases and stuff like that. It doesn't illustrate their point, especially because it's very overdone what they're saying, and they're almost always just talking about themselves anyway. But they put in phrases like lived experience that don't connect with the audience because it's redundant. We don't need you to say that it's a lived experience. You could have just said, we didn't like how that went down. This comment says, just Harry will go down in history as the saddest man because no one was willing to stalk him, chase him, have a pot shot at him, or even media overwhelm him. Poor lonely guy who interests no one, not even to answer a doorbell. There was he, wandering the streets aimlessly without security, still not even raising interest with the others on the street. He has truly fallen below sea level. I've always thought that this was part of why Just Harry and the Meg despised the media, because they weren't clamoring for photographs of Meghan and Harry. They weren't surrounding Meghan. The paparazzi weren't super excited to get Meghan Markle pictures because, you know, it's Harry and Meghan. It's not the future king and queen we're talking about. So it's a different level of interest. But Harry was only 2 years behind William. So he was very close to that entire experience playing out with William and with Catherine. And Catherine, like a good future sister-in-law, made friends with Harry. And so Harry saw what Catherine and William were going through and assumed that the same would be true for him. And I've always thought that when he first, based on the things that he said, particularly in the engagement interview, that Harry genuinely got the impression from Meghan that she was going to be very, very similar to Catherine, Princess of Wales, that he was basically getting his own Catherine, and that she was going to behave the same way and be as, you know, passionate and as kind and as graceful in her role as Catherine was. And I think Meghan sold that image to Harry intentionally. This is all just my personal opinion on the matter. But that further primed his expectations for not only lots of media attention, but for positive, exclusive media attention. Exclusively positive media attention, I should say. Jeanette says, Harry may have submitted an intention to have a UK residence and stay for a required time frame per year. This would mean that his circumstances had changed and therefore is eligible for the security he demands or a review. Good point. Also, because we now know that with Invictus coming to Birmingham and later this year, they're doing their first gala, which I don't know that this idea of an Invictus Gala is going to go very well, but for the sake of the athletes, I hope it does. But because there's several events coming up that are going to be big, I do think that this whole security review situation is actually all just going to be for the Invictus events. Because remember this whole, Harry's claiming he won back security, and we poked holes in that story already once. I'll link the video for you. But I think it actually, now that we know there's a gala later this year, it's all about that. That they're saying, sure, for the gala, for the Invictus-related events, for actual Invictus Week when that happens, you will get police protection for those events because they are bigger scale events and he's going to need to be traveling some, you know, from different locations within the area for those events. So I think he's been approved for that, but I don't think he's been approved for like standby 24/7 status the way he's been wanting and asking for. That is my prediction, but leave yours in the comments. Another good angle on the security situation came from Julia Ashton. The Sussex camp is leaking that his security increase will be approved unless Buckingham Palace vetoes it so that he can blame the palace if it's denied. I doubt his request will be approved by Ravik. Good point. Harry always plants seeds for, if the king doesn't see me, it's because he was too busy. Or, in this case, if I don't get security, then they must have intervened to try to change the way the public perceives the news when it does come out, which is very manipulative, and I don't like it. Sandra says what we are all thinking. Harry struggles with the fact that he is no longer important. The security fight is just a way for him to feel some connection to what he was prior to his marriage. Too bad he made such a poor choice for wife. His security probably won't change, but this makes him feel good to have that press out there. Thank you guys so much for your comments. I try to read every single comment, and I love being able to save them and share them with you in these videos. So keep the comments coming. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I'll see you next time. Bye.